please give a warm welcome to Johanna Martin. Is this a good side?
Good evening. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts cover of A Crimson and Clover was playing on the jukebox when I spied a not-so-happy woman during happy hour at the Madison Grill. The Madison Grill was just steps away from Albany's Empire State Plaza, where my father worked for the state of New York for over 30 years. It was a small brick building nestled into a brownstone block and is where state workers would go to throw back a few as reward for a job well done. The Madison Grill wasn't what I would call a family establishment, though in the early 80s, I'm not sure such a thing existed then. You had to walk through the bar to get to the restaurant, which usually meant getting a glimpse of a world that did not belong to me, nor did it seem like something I wanted to be a part of at 10 years old. But I did like going there for the pizza and the jukebox when my mom and my brother and I would meet my dad there at the end of the week. My parents were generous with the quarters and didn't mind me wandering off into the bar to play my favorite songs. On this particular Friday night, revelry was high as I was making my song selections, but I was drawn to a woman sitting at the end of the bar, hunched over her drink. And I could tell she was drunk, but I'm not sure I knew what that meant then. She was swaying and singing faintly to herself and not at all for attention, but I was captivated, watching her hold on to the things she was likely drinking to forget. And it was striking to see the effort she made to remain upright when all it looked like she wanted to do was fall apart. And for years, that song would haunt me. And it would take me right back to that moment in that bar with that woman. And I would feel unsettled and melancholy. And I think maybe a part of me might have realized even then that the woman and my father had a little bit more in common than I cared to admit. My father's falling apart has taken a lifetime. Piecing together that he was an alcoholic took some effort and is something I still grapple with. He once told my mother that alcohol was his best friend, a poetic way to describe his love affair with booze spanning well over 6 decades. His alcoholism could be considered civilized in that he was professionally successful, owned houses that felt like homes, and took us on vacation with family and friends. In many ways, I had much more than I needed, and in other ways, not nearly enough. His addiction was also regimented, every day the same. Beer upon returning home from work, after going for a run, wine with dinner, and then only after dinner, scotch. And honestly, I'd be a little relieved after he had his first drink because he was always seemingly more present and affable. And there was never any residue that can sometimes linger the following morning from drinks consumed the night before. And later I would learn to call home sometime between wine and scotch, as I was always met with the most expansive version of my father. And he never hid that he drank, and his enjoyment of it was obvious. And I would say drew others to him, as our house was often the center of celebration. And yet the effort it must have taken him to be an addict and a husband and a father in that order took a toll that I've only been able to unpack a bit more recently. He was always there and not at all there at the same time, and because of that, we never really knew each other. And looking back at the effort I've made to connect with my father through his addiction is as curious as it is staggering. I must have sensed that I needed to befriend his best friend in order to be close to him. As a child, I would play bartender, and I would mix food coloring into water to pretend that I was drinking cocktails. Later in college, when I got drunk for the first time, embarrassingly off of 2 fuzzy navels, I called home to my dad, giggling over delight at my accomplishment. My adult alcohol-adjacent interests seem peculiar, thankfully, because drinking never really became my thing. I collected funky glassware and quippy cocktail napkins. I relished in having a second drinks-only fridge. I always made sure to have my dad's favorite brand of scotch on hand when he came to visit. But I think the biggest kicker was the pride I felt in my choice of husband, now ex-husband, and that I knew he would be a great drinking partner for my dad in ways that I hadn't been. The combination of my dad's early retirement without hobbies or deep friendships fueled his not-so-dormant depression, which led to more drinking. And he's tried to quit over the years, every now and again going cold turkey, which to him was a badge of honor and proof that the problem could be tamed. But after 6 months or 9 months or maybe a year, he would start with a beer, and then wine with dinner, and then eventually scotch would make its return. In 2017, he went to rehab for the first time, and at this point, my parents were trying out living separately as an attempt to draw new boundaries around an old problem. And this was the same year my marriage ended, and so the pain of watching their marriage crumble, while mine had also, took effort beyond measure. And even though my dad was in this precarious situation, potentially losing his wife, his focus was squarely on finding somewhere warm and sunny for treatment. And so he spent about 6 weeks at a Betty Ford outside Palm Springs. And when he got back, I said, "Hey, how did it go?" And he said, "Well, I loved that they had a soft serve ice cream machine in the cafeteria." And so while my dad would freely admit that he's an alcoholic, it would be in name only. My dad will be 82 next month, but I'm not sure he will remember that it's his birthday. Doctors say years of consuming large amounts of alcohol has caused brain atrophy and cognitive decline, and his ability to take care of himself and remember things falters day by day. My dad makes an effort to remember if he had breakfast or if he took his medication, but to no avail. And he made an effort to remain married to my mom, and he made it 53 years. And while he continues to make an effort to quit drinking, breaking up with his best friend is proving much more difficult than ending his marriage. Last summer, the Madison Grill had to be demolished after a fire next door caused irreparable damage. And it's hard not to see that as kind of a metaphor for what's happening with my dad. A couple of weeks ago, he and I were running errands, and I dropped him back off at his apartment, and he ran into one of his neighbors, and he said, "This is my daughter." And he took just a beat too long to land my name. Watching him forget all that he is and has, I try to muster compassion instead of a resentment. Both of us are hanging on to our efforts. It's the closest thing we have to each other. Thank you.